Hello and welcome to the King Arthur guide. This guide will be split into three sections. The first section will be on building, the second section will be on Arthur's passive abilities and basic attacks, and the third section will be on Arthur's sort of fighting, combos and general high level mechanical tips and tricks. So we'll get started off with the building. This is going to be a guide for King Arthur solo, or in any other game modes he will just be built as sort of a standard warrior. I have played Arthur in the jungle. He has very bad clear, however obviously one of Arthur's great strengths is his fighting, so once you get Gladiator Shield online your fighting potential is very high. However the clear makes him fall behind too easily if you're playing against a good player. So this guide will be for solo. Starting off with the solo start, you definitely want Warrior's Blessing, and then you have two options. The first option I personally prefer because I like being very aggressive and fighting a lot, is you get Warrior's Blessing, Chalice of Healing, and then either 3 or 4 healing potions as well. This gives you an absolute ton of sustain. The other option, which I don't like as much, is you start off with Warrior's Blessing and then Round Shield, and then say like 3 healing potions, or 2 healing potions and a multi potion, or 2 healing potions and a mana potion. But obviously personally I prefer getting about 4 healing potions as well. Your relic at the start is going to want to be Teleport Glyph in solo. Your first back you want to back as soon as you have enough for Gladiator Shield, because once you have enough for Gladiator Shield the enemy jungler can no longer gank you. Arthur is very good in 1v1 fights, and he is even better in a 1v2 fight because of his passive, which I will explain, and also Gladiator Shield leads to him having a ton of sustain and not taking much damage. So you're going to start with Gladiator Shield. Remember, you want to try and stack Warrior's Blessing as quickly as possible. You want to deal damage every 10 seconds to the enemy and get it to 15 stacks. That's pretty much it. Then your next back, you can generally either get Warrior Tabby or Blackthorn Hammer. I prefer getting Warrior Tabby. However, if you are doing very well in lane, Blackthorn Hammer is a good idea here. It will work well against both physicals and magicals. I'll just pick up Warrior Tabby, and then obviously I prefer going Blackthorn Hammer. Then generally I like to get Genji's Guard or Void Shield. If I have been fighting lots of physicals I will get Void Shield, especially if I'm against a physical in solo. Or I would get Genji's Guard if I'm against a magical, or even a magical jungler, or if I'm rotating to mid more often. And then you would get Void Shield here, and then eventually you would sell Warrior's Blessing and pick up Mantle of Discord. Your second relic, you can really decide. If you're going to be fighting hunters in the backline, Thorns is a good pickup, Shell can also be a fine pickup, Sprint as well, Blink possibly, Horrific Emblem if you want, Frenzy, just generally sort of solo lane relics are good here. You can like swap out some of these items. For instance, you can get Pestilence if healing is an issue. You could even sell Boots for Brawler's Beat Stick to get more anti-healing. If you're diving the hunters at the back, Hide of the enemy in line is a great idea too. But the general tips are you want to build him quite tanky. Arthur really does well with being tanky. He's going to be in the middle of a bunch of enemies. He's going to be preferably duking damage, but you can't duke all damage, so you will end up taking some. So having those protections will help you keep alive in fights, and then your Gladiator Shield helps you to sustain. That is why Gladiator Shield is an absolute must on Arthur. It is the corest of core items on him. You also want to try and get 40% cooldown, as Arthur is heavily reliant on his abilities, especially for his sustain with Gladiator Shield. You can swap out items for these situations, as I say, like Pestilence, Hide of the enemy in line for instance, but generally you want to try and have 40% cooldown. You want to be at that cap. Remember, going like 10% over depending on the situation can be okay. If you want late game to sell Boots for and have a ton of damage, you know, Heartseeker, you do have essentially sort of 8 damaging abilities, so this will be applied quite a bit, especially, you know, 3%, that will be 24% of an enemy's health. And that is it for the building section on King Arthur. So now on to Arthur's passive abilities and basic attacks. I will discuss the ability level order after I've covered what his abilities do. So let's start off with his basic attacks. The progression chain is very weird. Arthur's basic attacks are unique in the fact that all of them are technically a cleave, and you can see this in, as it says in AoE. That just means a cleave, like the third hit on Thanatos' basic attack chain. However, only one enemy will take 1 damage. So as you can see here, this is my basic attack damage, the 194. So only one enemy will be taking that damage, and then all the other enemies in that AoE will take 0.33 times of that. So that is about 66 damage. Obviously that's quite a significant drop off, but it cannot help with clear in lane. And you also lunge when no target is in range. Now what this means is, if you were right next to an enemy and you basic attacked, as you can see, it's just like a normal basic attack. However, if you are further away, you'll actually lunge towards an enemy. Now this does not have infinite range, as you can see, and you can walk while doing these as well. However, as you can see, when I do one, I am significantly slowed at the end of it. So you still get that basic attack movement penalty. So don't go around walking around like this. It's not going to speed you up anymore. Then on to Arthur's passive, Steadfast. Each ability that damages a god results in a stack of Steadfast, reducing damage taken and increasing energy gain. Each time King Arthur uses an ability, he swaps between his standard and combo abilities. For the purpose of this guide, I will be calling his standard abilities A, so I would for instance say 1A. For his combo abilities, I will call those stands B. So for instance, his 1B, he has a 1A and a 1B. The blue colours are for the standard abilities, and the combo abilities you will see are in orange. All abilities are on instant cast. Attack speed and item passives do not benefit his basic attacks. However, I believe crit does, but you don't want to be building crit on King Arthur anyway, so it's really irrelevant. And attack speed will actually increase his energy gain, which we will get onto. But the conversion rate is only 33%, so don't go stacking a bunch of attack speed on Arthur. If you want to do a little meme build, you can. However, it will not be sort of viable. So as you can see on this Steadfast, each time he damages a god, he'll gain a stack of this, and it stacks up to 4 times, and the stacks last for 15 seconds. If you get down to say 10 seconds and you hit another god, the duration will just go back up to 15 seconds. So you will gain damage mitigation, and you will also gain bonus energy. The mitigation will go up to 6% with 4 stacks. This does affect true damage, as it is all damage mitigation. It's just damage mitigation, it's not physical or magical, it's just damage in general. And then this bonus energy gain will get to a max of 80%. So now on to Arthur's abilities. Let's start with his 1. We'll start with his 1A. As you can see, it's in blue here. Overhead slash. He will deal a devastating overhead blow that in melee range creates a slashing attack that travels forward. Enemies hit by the melee strike take bonus damage from the slicing attack. So it pretty much just means enemies sort of in this area, you will see when I cast the ability, there's a line here that sort of demonstrates where it is. They'll be taking bonus damage. So I'll just show you what this looks like. As you can see, there was a little box there. Enemies in there will take bonus damage, and it's just a line that does damage. That's it. Now his sort of 1B, as you can see, it's in orange now. Hamstring. He will swipe low, crippling and damaging enemies that are struck. It cripples for 1.25 seconds, and it's good for cancelling or preventing dashes. As you can see, it's in a cone like that. Now onto his 2A. It does damage in an AoE circle around you, and it slows. As you can see there, enemies will take damage and be slowed. I think it's a 40% slow. Yes, it is at max rank. Now his 2B, uppercut. He will charge forward, stopping on the first god hit, and at the end of the charge he unleashes an uppercut that knocks up all enemies that are in the air. So if there was another Odin bot standing right next to this Odin bot, they would get knocked off. I can't demonstrate on those Odin bots because those Odin bots can't be affected by CC. But as you can see, dash forward and it knocks up. Any enemies that are right next to this Odin bot would be knocked up too. So you can knock up multiple enemies at once. Then onto his 3E, Twin Cleave. He will unleash 2 cleave attacks while charging forward. This counts as a dash. Enemies hit by the cleave damage take damage and have their protections reduced as well. It's only a 7% protection shred, as you can see, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, he took 2 hits there, and it dashed straight through them. For his 3B, Blade Storm, he will swing Excalibur around him, charging forward. So he'll go forward. This counts as a dash as well, and he will hit 5 times before doing a final strike that's a bit slower, but it does more damage. He's also immune to knock up for the duration, and this is what it looks like. You can turn in the ability, just so you can see. And then his 4E, Sundering Strike. You need 35 energy for this. As you can see on this sword here, this is sort of Excalibur, and this is how charged up Excalibur is. This first line here that you can see, this will be when he can use his 4E. I'll just charge it up really quickly. So as you can see now, I can use it. It was red before, that means I couldn't use it. He will simply dash, he will simply do a little step forward and do a big jab that hits all enemies in the area, doing damage and stunning them. And as you can see, there, pretty simple. And now onto Arthur's 4B. I'm going to have to charge this up fully. Okay, as you can see, it's now turned orange. This is Excalibur. I believe this is Excalibur's Wrath. Actually, the first one was Sundering Strike. This is Excalibur's Wrath. So this is at 80 energy. As you can see, I got it up to this second line here, and when it's here, Arthur's sword will sort of be glowing very orange, and it will also be demonstrated on his actual model as well. This is glowing a lot brighter colour than it was before. It's easier to see on other skins, and it will glow different colours. But pretty much, it's sort of a bit like his 2B, in that he will charge forward and stop on the first enemy god hit. However, he will only take 1 god, and when he hits this god, he will knock him and himself up and be in a banish with them. This means he's untargetable. Him and the enemy are untargetable. However, if they were to have dot damage or damage over time, for instance, Sir Kettle Poison, that can still damage them. They aren't immune to damage, they're only immune to targeting. So for instance, an Awilix ult can't pull them out of it. It will do damage, it will do flat damage, as you can see here. He does 6 of these hits, damage per hit. He will do 6 of these, which is, at the end it's 70, plus I believe that's 10% of your physical power, and he will also do a percentage of their max health. So and then he will also do a landing damage blow, which is a final blow at the end, which does a lot more damage. In total, this ability does 710 power, so 710 damage, plus 110% of his physical power, plus 25% of the enemy god's health. So I will demonstrate this here. So you're also CC immune, and you can cast this whilst under the effects of a cripple. Either of your 3s you can't, because those are both dashes. However, you can cast your 4B. As you can see, knock them up, do 6 hits, and then do a final hit. If an enemy beads as this ability, it will skip straight to the final hit and do that hit, and then you'll land. And now let's move on to the ability upgrade order. I'm going to go and reset my level. So at level 1, you're going to want to be taking your first ability. Then, at level 2, you're going to be taking your third ability. So now you technically have 4 abilities here. At level 1, Arthur is the most weakest. At level 2, he is slightly stronger. However, you can get a big damage spike at level 3 if you put a second point in your 3. This is just because there is a big damage jump, especially with your 3B. which is Arthur's most damaging ability. Then you're going to obviously want to put a point into your 2, so now you have all of his abilities. Then at level 5, obviously, pick up your ult. If you've been hitting the enemy lane and brawling with them, and keeping an eye on keeping your passive up so you can build up the energy really quickly, you should have enough for your 4B. It's a good idea to cast it on cooldown, and especially in fights, which we'll get onto later. Then you're going to want to put points into your 1, then your ult, because you can now put a second point in it, and then your 1 again. So at this point you'll have 2 points in your ult, 2 points in your 3, 1 point in your 2, and your 1 will be maxed. Then you just upgrade your 3, upgrade your ult, upgrade your 3, points into your 2, points into your ult, points into your 2, points into your ult. There you go. So generally you put a point in your ult whenever you can. You max your 1 first, however you put 2 points into your 3 at level 3. That's the only thing to note really. You put 2 points into your 3 at level 3, and then you put a point into your ult whenever you can, point into your 1 whenever you can, point into your 3 whenever you can, and then a point into your 2 whenever you can. That's sort of the upgrade order. And that is it for Arthur's passive, abilities and basic attacks. Now on to Arthur's fighting, combos and mechanical tips and tricks. The biggest tip that I have for Arthur, or one of the biggest, is to use the ruler. You can enable this by going into your settings, into targeting, and then where it says distance line, normally I play with the line on. However, on Arthur I would highly recommend using the ruler, especially if you're just trying him out for like the first time. Now the reason behind this is because all of his abilities are on instant cast, and now as you will notice, the range on his 1, as you can see here, this number here outside of these brackets or parentheses is 70. What is the range of the ruler? 70. It's straight, it's just the exact distance of this line, so you will always know that if an enemy is on this line, they will be getting damaged by your 1A. Your 1B then is 30 range. Oh, there's a marker for 30 there. Easy. And then your 2B and your 4B. So your 2B, which is the uppercut, has a distance of 35. Now this will just be past the 30 mark here, as you can see. So you can generally know that if they are just past this 30 and obviously before it, they'll get hit by that. And your ult is actually the same. It's got the same range, and I actually won't demonstrate because it'll take too long to build up. But as you'll notice here, that has 35 too. These both, this 2B and 4B, have 35 range, so they all will have the exact same range. And then your 4A has a range of 45. Now the interesting thing about his 4A is that, remember he does that little step forward, that actually results in, if they are on this 55 range mark, even though it's only got a range of 45, he still gets hit by it. So actually it has a range of about 55 units, not just 45. So you can know that if they are before that line, they'll get hit by it. And you can actually increase the range of your 4A even further by doing an auto attack cancel. So as you know, Arthur does a little dash there. Now this dash is quicker than normally walking around. The initial dash is, however obviously the movement speed penalty won't be. So if I was to do an auto attack before this 55, as you can see, it obviously increased the range. Now, because Arthur has a Gladiator's Shield, not the passive of it, anytime you hit an enemy god with an ability, you are healed for 2.5% of your maximum health and mana. This can only trigger once per god hit per ability. This means that in fights, your goal generally when diving the backline is to try and hit them and any sort of supports that are peeling for them or trying to create distance between you and them, to try and hit them with your abilities as much as possible. And then this is especially important in your 3B. because it lasts the longest out of all your abilities, and you can end up hitting multiple enemies with it. Now a tip for your 3B to control it if you're just trying to hit one person is if you hold S while in it, you'll actually slow down. So I will not hold S, and then I'll tell you when I'm holding S. I'll hold S, as you can see I slowed down. This can help you if you're trying to stick on one spot. If you just normally cast it whilst an enemy's moving around, it might be quite difficult to keep on them, especially if they're trying to juke. But if you just sort of stick on them and hold S, it's a lot easier to stay in one place. For poking lane, you will generally, an easy poke is your 2B into your 1E. However, you can throw an auto attack in before your 2B and after your 2B whilst they're knocked up in the air. So as you can see, they'll still be hit by that. Now if I was to use my 1A after, sorry I messed up that there. As you can see, that's great perk. If you want it more confirmed, you can just do no auto attack in between them. If you're trying to confirm your ult, there are a couple of ways to do this, especially against good players. Against good players who are very good at juking, they will notice when your ult is up and they will be actively trying to juke it. The easiest way to confirm it is to knock them up and then cast it. Just knock them up and then cast it there. Personally, I prefer doing 2 auto attack and then ulting, just for a bit of extra damage. The other way to do it is mainly for if you're in a fight, because if you're in a fight, the people who are peeling or trying to create space in for the enemy team, they're sort of guardians, they're supports. They will be trying to body block both your 2B and your ult. So what can you do to solve this? You can try and throw them off. How do you throw them off? Well, if you are just walking around trying to find space to look to hit them, they will notice that. However, if you were to use your dash and then ult, do like sort of a 180 or even a 90 degrees and ult them out of it, you can throw them off. I'll demonstrate what that looks like. Something like that. Now, if you are trying to cancel either his, you can do this with either your 3 or 3B actually. So your 3B, you can just do it when it's going to get to the end of it. Again, your 3B, it gives you bonus movement speed. You'll be faster than the other enemies. It does help. You can actually juke in this pretty effectively because of the increased movement speed. And also at the end, you can obviously pick whatever direction you want to ult in, to allow you to maneuver around and get around those sort of pesky supports. Now, when you're getting out of base, or you're just trying to move around the map, or even in fights, if you don't want to be hitting players with your auto attacks, you can throw an auto attack in between each ability and actually get out of base pretty effectively. So if I was just trying to move around without doing auto attacks, I could just do something like this. Now as you can see, I had pretty good mobility there. However, throwing an auto attack in between them will increase your sort of mobility exponentially. So I'll demonstrate what that would look like. Like that. The purpose is that you want to time the ability after each auto attack. After you do the dash, you want to cancel it into an ability, so you don't get sort of the slowed effect. And that's pretty much it. Now I will just finish off this guide with a nice little fun thing you can do, maybe in your games if you want.
Maybe Merlin's creations? This power rivals Excalibur itself.
So I'll just finish this guide off with a fun thing you can do if you go with a full damage build on Arthur with his... Actually no, this is the right time to do it. So I'll just finish this guide off with a fun little thing you can do. So I'll just finish this guide off with a fun little thing you can do if you have full damage Arthur. Dead. And that's pretty much it for the guide. Your ult can actually one-shot with a full damage build. Obviously I have full damage potions here. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I will also credit a Arthur guide I saw on Twitter as well, which helped me with a few things on this. I know Deathwalker helped them out. It's a ranked player called Okami Leon. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation, but I will link his tweet in the description, so you can actually read through some of the points that I made in this video. He helped me think of a few new things with that. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and learnt something.